welcome.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for your time. Good morning to everyone. So my name is Leroy. So I'm actually the head of business development at Hope Money, right? So before I start my presentation, I would actually like to take the stage to actually thank Chainlink for inviting us over. So it's a great opportunity to be able to showcase our project, at the same time to be able to meet kind of like other projects here in Barcelona as well, right? So let's get on with the presentation, right? So home money, I think, like as cheesy as it sounds, I know that like a lot of like Web3 guys, we use kind of like the future of finance. But essentially, I think what we are trying to do, right, is like to build kind of like the next stage of finance, right, via a distributed stablecoin ecosystem and also like kind of like build its ecosystem as well, right? So because we do believe that the stablecoin itself, is a very core of like the cryptocurrency system, which is why we have decided to go through this route. So before we dive deep into kind of like the stablecoin system and like the cryptocurrency in general, right? So we can talk about kind of like the other assets that are out there currently in the market. So even though like gold or silver have already been present in the market for quite a period of time, right? And then gold being like the core since way like thousands of years, right? Silver essentially did not replace gold as like a store of value, right? Gold has always been viewed as like by people as a store of value, and neither did gold kind of like replace the dollar as well, because like dollar just essentially, it's easier to transact, it's easier for people to kind of like bring that money around. So I think that is the kind of like the case essentially for cryptocurrency as well, right? So essentially we are not kind of like looking to compete or replace like the US dollar, right? So cryptocurrency and the US dollar can both exist at the same time, right? So it doesn't mean that cryptocurrency will ultimately replace the dollar. It's just an easier medium for people to kind of like transact cross-border at the end of the day. So so if you kind of like look at this slide, so this slide is kind of like significant and kind of like personal to me, right? Because it's kind of like a summary of all the events that kind of like happen like across 2022 and 2023, right? Like personally for me, because like 2022 has been quite a tough year, because like I was actually like the head of lending in Asia Pacific for Genesis Trading, right? So we kind of like went down with the firm kind of like went down with the entire like liquidation crisis that kind of like happened in the summer, as well as FTX as well. So if you kind of like look at the entire sequence of events, right? So like the first one on the right that you see, like you see that FTX kind of like happen like in November of 2022, right? So it kind of like shows that like trusted mediums, like you kind of like need to place your trust in them and your assets in them, and then ultimately like because they operate in kind of like a black box, so essentially it kind of like went down. And then if you look at it like the same across to the left, you kind of like see Credit Suisse happening earlier this year as well, right? So essentially if you look at like across like all these events, right, basically like people do need a plan B. And similar to guys that place their faith in kind of like Credit Suisse or even like the rest of the institutions as well. So like our objective at like Hope Money is to essentially like build a stable coin that is kind of like frictionless, open in the sense that like the reserves are kind of like open, so that you know that things are kind of like being backed by either BTC or ETH, right? And then transparent about the reserve as well, and then to kind of like develop an entire new experience for users. Right. So this is how we kind of like work at Home Money, right? So we use the word distributed a lot because we kind of like would like to distribute ultimately the risk. So if you kind of like think about it, right, that ultimately each country trusts their own custodians, their own distributor, right? Someone in the US would definitely trust someone of US origin, someone in like Asia would definitely trust someone of Asia origin, right? So which is why you would naturally like to have distributed reserves, right? And then at the same time, distributed kind of like distributors, because like you do believe the distributors that are in your country, right? And then also have a wide network of distribution as well, right? And then that will kind of like mean like you be like cross-chain, like whether is it like mainnet or whether is it kind of like roll-ups. Yeah. So we actually took like our idea from actually like the Hong Kong dollar, right? So the Hong Kong dollar is like important because like if you go like above like basically like 20 honky dollar, right? Like the node itself, right, is actually has like different banks like across like the node itself. So you have so which is why there is the case of like the distributed distributors, right? So in this case, in this node itself, like you see that it's actually Bank of China, right? So there are other participants like HSBC and like Standard Chartered as well, which is kind of like involved in distributing like the Hong Kong dollar. And very often, I think, like we would actually like to use the word DAO, right? And then and DAO like very often refers back to actually like the Chinese word Dao, right? So in this case, for us, like DAO begets one, and then one begets two, and then two begets three, and then three begets all. And what does it actually mean, right? So in this case, like the DAO. So the DAO meaning like you know, like our ecosystem kind of like gave birth to one. So one is actually the stablecoin, right? So because like the stablecoin is at the very core, you kind of like need it to actually allow the entire ecosystem to operate. And then one begets two. So after like you actually have the stablecoin, right? Then you need its own ecosystem, which in this case, the two means our own DEX and our own like lending protocol, allowing people to basically like conduct exchanges and at the same time kind of like deposit assets so that they can get their yield as well. And then two begets three, and then three is kind of like our most important protocol, which is like the Connect protocol, right? So the Connect protocol is actually kind of like a clearing and settlement protocol. You know, like we basically, which is like kind of like the very fundamental of all transactions, basically to facilitate like real world payments, right? So just think about it that if on this day, like if I were to transact with someone that I have no background, no history about, right? So essentially, I wouldn't trust that person will deliver the goods to me, and neither would he. So what we are trying to build here essentially is where you actually build an escrow, and before like the person deliver the goods to you, like your payment will actually sit in an escrow account, right, to protect you from basically like the guy from not delivering his good. Sorry. And like once the good has been delivered and then in your hands, that's where the payment will actually be released to the other guys. So that's where we are trying to mitigate like all this counterparty risk, credit risk, and ensure like real-time settlement. So this is part of our roadmap. So if you look at our roadmap, right? So foundation is kind of like where we kind of like built the foundation of the protocol, which kind of like includes like the stablecoin, the ecosystem, the swap, the lending protocol, and the Connect protocol as well. And then the fortifications like includes like making all this protocol like stronger, and then Renaissance is when we kind of like expand to like multi-chain and things like that. And then obviously like under all this different like all these three roadmap, like Chainlink is very essential to our development as well. So if you can kindly so we are pretty new. So I think like we actually literally launched like March 2023 this year, and then obviously we have a very long roadmap ahead, right? So this is kind of like our roadmap and kind of like the partners that we have at the moment, and hoping to expand even more, right? And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you everyone for listening. Thank you.